Ta-da! I just wanted to make sure that I muted the video that I had up on YouTube on another tab this time, so we didn't have any cross echoes. Oh, good. I don't hear any. All right. So welcome, everybody. My name is Margaret. Thanks for stopping by my channel. You're on BookTube. And what are we doing today? It is Tuesday, but it is not going to be a Tag Tuesday. I have something else important to bring to you today, and that is in honor of Native American Heritage Month, or November. So we're in November, we're halfway through, a little past, and for Nano writers, you'll definitely be aware of that date, I realized. Hey JD, thanks for stopping by. Nice to see you on the down low. And why am I, a non-native booktuber, author-tuber, choosing to highlight a Native November spotlight for the month, right? Here we go. I am choosing to do this because November for Americans is usually associated with Thanksgiving, and I think most of us continue to have a pretty child's eye view of what Thanksgiving is, and so I'm setting out to be an ally and educate people on things they might not know, to get a bigger picture, to get a more critical understanding of our history, and have fun, right? Because there are some really cool things to learn about. Hello, Anita. Thanks for stopping by. And lunch is ready. Okay, there we go. JD's off to lunch. All right, so what else happens in November to honor Native American Heritage Month? Well, there's a really cool readathon called Indigathon, and so I will be going through some of the prompts, more the spirit of the prompts than the actual reading of the books of the prompts, because there's a lot of things going on this month. Nonfiction November, Nano, a lot of live streams and travel and book events and stuff as an author. So we're gonna honor the purpose behind without necessarily reading a book for each of those prompts. So let me show you, let's see, the prompts that I have are on this page. I'll drop it in the chat here so that you can follow along with me if you like. Indigathon is a readathon that is run by Brody and Thor Wants Another Letter, and those are two great native booktubers. So I've got their links down in the description if you want to follow. They do a lot of great work and put out recommendations and explain books and gather people together for collaborations. So definitely recommend checking them out. This is the Indigathon 2021 account on Instagram, and they're really easy sort of prompts to look at that I will be going through. The first one is the group book, which is Apple in the Middle by Don Quigley. Apple in the middle, I did not know before last year, is actually a insult or slur, because it's one of many things that can be used to describe something that is one color on the outside and white on the inside. So that was a whole new thing that I was awakened to last year. I do not have this book, so this one I am not joining in on. The next prompt is about Indigenous joy, and I was going to read a little bit from an excerpt from an essay in All We Can Save. So you've probably heard me talk about this before. This is a collection that is unique about climate crisis. It's got poetry, it's got cartoons, it's got essays, it's got memoir stuff, and it's really, really good. So I had tabs and then I branched out into turning down because they weren't nearby. So sorry, book, but really good, really recommended. It's edited by Ayana Elizabeth Johnson, who's great on Twitter, as well as Katharine K. Wilkinson. So there we go. And the excerpt I'm going to read is from Tara Houska, who is Couchiching First Nation, and she has a TED Talk actually on her role in Standing Rock protests and all that. And sorry, I'm trying to do three things at once. And so I wanted to just read the beginning of her essay, which is titled Sacred Resistance, as part of the Indigenous Joy spirit. So, sitting on the well-worn wood floor of a tiny cabin just off the Red Lake Reservation in northern Minnesota, I breathed deeply. The aromas of drying sage, burning cedar, and bubbling wild rice soup filled my lungs. Would you like to visit with them? The elder asked. For the past 20 minutes, he had quietly spoken of 4 medicine drums that made their way back to the people, liberated from behind museum glass where they sat silenced, isolated for many decades. I nodded and greeted the new spirits sitting with us after they were carefully unwrapped. On the rough wooden table beside us, several handmade snowshoes rested, waiting for final touches and feet to hold until the crusty snows of Onabani Gizis, hard crust on snow moon, disappear. There is no climate change or economic policy in this place. Its walls hear murmurings of the forest, of the water, of the life around us, and our place within it. Interaction with one another, with all that lives, is thoughtful, respectful. Simple discourse is pregnant with hidden wisdom awaiting further reflection. It is in spaces like this that my feet grow heavier, the roots grow stronger. And then she transitions into the, sadder and more rage-inducing issues of economic policy and the other spaces that she inhabits and where she fights for Indigenous rights. But I thought the beginning of that essay was a great way to talk about Indigenous joy, talking about drums coming back from a museum into the nation that actually could use them. That's new for me. Yeah, apple in the middle. Yep, normal apples. No cannibalistic commentary. And Beth Ann is here. Hello, Beth Ann. Welcome. We're going through the prompts of Indigathon, and I'm on the second one, Indigenous Joy. And we just read an excerpt from All We Can Say. Highly recommend. 5-star read. The next prompt is read a host recommendation. So I'm going to just refer you down to the hosts in the description. Bear at Brody. Their pronouns are they and them. And Michelle at Thor Wants Another Letter. And I've watched some of their videos throughout the couple years, almost year and a half. I've been on Booktube, and they're great. And basically, well, I guess I've had most of my Indigenous written books come to me from their recommendations or from random finds at my great local bookstores. So shout out to them. Check out their channels. Check out their recommendations. And especially, I'm going to highlight 2 other, actually, I don't know why I was going to do this later, but I'll do it here. 2 other booktubers who I really enjoy their videos. That would be Kim at Native Lady Book Warrior, and Kim is Satawa, which is Tobacco Clan from the village of Tewa, and she is Tewa and Hopi and from the Hopi Reservation. So she does so many things, has so many stories on Instagram all the time supporting causes. She has a very involved description on every video where she shouts out other causes, climate justice, murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, like all these great things. And so she's a lovely resource and a lovely person on Booktube. So I love Kim and want to shout her out. And then the second person was Melitta from the Midnight Librarian. She's also in the description. And I pointed out that her recommendation video for this year's Indigathon is a whopper. It's like an hour. So if you have lots of time and you want to settle into some Indigenous book recommendations, check out Melitta's video that I've linked in the description. So there you go. And Pei is here. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for stopping in. The next prompt for Indigathon is a nonfiction book. And this is great for people who are trying to do nonfiction November along with Indigathon because this is where they overlap. And the one that I am reading for this is A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia Elliott. I've had this for a while. It's also gonna, I'll wait till later. And I've just started it this month, so I'm a few chapters in. She is a member of the Mohawk Nation, and the reason this is called this, A Mind Spread Out on the Ground, is that is the Mohawk phrase for depression, roughly translated. So in this, kind of like Heartberries by Therese Marie Mailhot. She's going over mental health issues and talking about some of her personal history. So it's a bit of a memoir, narrative nonfiction that I'm finding really interesting. So it's living up to its gorgeous cover. So that's good. I'll have more on that later when I've finished, obviously. The other one that I just started this morning. Oh, I have a thing for this. Sorry, catching up with technology. The other nonfiction that I have just started reading for Indigathon prompt number 4 is, yes, there we go, Unreconciled by Jessie Wente. Let me get the banner out of the way. And this is on libro.fm. And so I've been listening to this just a little bit. He starts out with a really affecting episode of being on a baseball team and for the first time hearing people doing what they consider to be a war whoop to sort of, degrade, kind of like you would shout at someone, we want a pitcher, not a belly itcher. This was the way that the crowd was shouting at him because when he was up at bat, they wanted to, put him down so that he got nervous and would miss. But different, doesn't apply to everyone, special for him because it's native degradation. It's this cartoon character. He talks about how it's the Hollywood stereotype and he'd never seen anyone in his community make this noise. And so it was specifically a white identity targeted at a native identity thing. And that's just the first chapter. So he's already gone into a little bit of his relationship with his grandmother. It's sounding really good. I definitely recommend this on libro.fm. Unreconciled by Jessie Wente. Family, Truth, and Indigenous Resistance. We've got some more people. Hello, Jim. Greetings and salutations. Beth Ann, that's been on my TBR forever. I think you're talking about this one. Yep. And just saying hello. Welcome. All right. So our next prompt, take this down. So many things going on. Our next prompt, number 5, is about land acknowledgements. So it's asking us to read a book by an Indigenous author whose tribal lands you live on. And I, again, not reading books for all these prompts, but in the spirit of land acknowledgements, I went to the site that is talked about the most on all these channels, which is, let me put it in the chat here. If you haven't done this before, it's this great site. It uses a map of the world and takes into account the overlapping areas of tribal, not sovereignty, but I think historical, what's the word I'm looking for? And habitation. And so here in Portland, Oregon, I am on the unceded lands. I think that's what they say. I don't know what the legal bit of that is, but when I go to the Oregon Historical Society events, they always start with a land acknowledgement. And the unceded lands part is, I think, the fact that it was not given away and it's not lawfully, the peoples who are living on it. But I'd love more input if you know more about that specific legal term, because Whereas does that. I just listened to Roz at Scally Dandling about the books, talk about Whereas. It's just super interesting. And now I want to get more in unceded lands because that sounds important. So if you check out this map, I am on the unceded lands of, I'll put the links that I grabbed up in here. 1 and 2 and 3. This is not going smoothly, so thank you for bearing with me as I'm copying and pasting here. Oh, Charles is here. Hello. Unceded land means land was taken without a treaty agreement, or a treaty that was broken, probably. Yeah, thank you. Good points. Grand Ronde, that is a very large territory that takes in a lot of Oregon. That is a federation of like 50 different tribes and bands. So that is a big group. Here we go. This is Cowlitz. Confederation of Tribes there. Sorry, that's Cowlitz. I'm getting mixed up here in my links. Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. There we go. Okay. So Cowlitz is this link here, and then Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians here. They're all overlapping territories of Southwest Washington, Northwest Oregon, Northern California, and have different places that they call home that they've lived in for a very long time. So that's acknowledging the land that we're on. And if you've got recommendations for authors who are in Siletz Band or Cowlitz Tribes or Grand Ronde Federated Tribes, hit me with them. I know I've got a few, and I'll have to like look them up and find some. I've also got a couple more in my stack here that I'll get to. But if you want to visit or have visited this map, native-land.ca, definitely comment below with your land acknowledgement of where you are. You can tell us where it is in the Google Maps, and then you can tell us whose land it is you're on. Kind of neat. And as you just saw me stumble through the names and words and terms that are not familiar to me yet, but I'm trying to learn them. I did an original tag quiz last week that was using some of these terms, and Amy at A Star Reads was helpfully diving into the comments to acknowledge that, yes, there are a lot of different terms. There are a lot of overlapping understandings about territories and treaties and this kind of thing. So we're working through it. I always appreciate people pointing out where I'm making mistakes or not really getting the right meaning. So feel free to comment if you've got more learning than I have, which is not hard. All right, so sorry for my voice too. It's getting tired. The next prompt for Indigathon is favorite color. And this is where I was going to pop this one back up because it's this beautiful like teal. And I don't know if it's got a special name or meaning for the author, but I kind of match it. I'm kind of matching it here with my decorations. The sixth prompt is about Indigenous poetry. And this is going to be another one I'm going to read. This is a book I picked up at another read through. It's actually personalized by JC Mehta because they came by and did a reading while I was working there, which is really cool. The collection is called SAVAGERY. I think it's her ninth collection of poetry from Early Press. JC Mehta is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. They are the author of over 12 books and the recipient of numerous poet in residence posts. I think the reason they were at another read through is that they grew up here, but they're now in Washington, D.C. as a fellow. So very cool. And I just picked out one poem to read. This is titled For My Father by JC Mehta. And look at that cool cover. Ah. For my father. I remember driving for miles on heat-crazed Saturday mornings, following cardboard signs for garage sales, reading directions to you from the nickel ads, fingers black and grimy. Tough pancakes from McDonald's suffocating in syrup. Do you want this dipped slow in a thick Oklahoma drawl as you raised a ceramic horse stickered for $1 with your brown calloused hands? Not your face at my piano recitals or your words on my birthday. But I'll always know how thin your legs looked next to mine in the truck, the country songs you sang to make me roll my eyes, the taste of peanuts, an endless Coke Mom would never let me have, a secret gathering dust, salt blanketing my thighs. So I thought that was neat. In a month that we're often thinking about family, it's like a road trip with her father and a secret ritual. So Indigenous poetry. These are one of the easiest things to access and most widely available. So even if a thin volume is Even if a thin volume costs the same as a regular novel, just know that there's reasons for that behind the publishing industry machine. So don't be scared off. It can be really, really good. So that was Indigenous poetry. If you've got Indigenous poetry recs, put them in the comments. Oh, Beth Ann, lucky gal. Robin Wall Kimmerer is a local author for me now, right? In New York. Very cool. Shay with the Hobbies is here, late but here. Thanks for coming. Love to see you. So yeah, Indigenous poetry recs, drop them in the comments. The last prompt is for an elder protagonist, a book with an elder protagonist. And I tried not to use the same the same books that I did last year because we want to expand the palette and not use the same old recommendations. So for an elder protagonist, I really did like Two Old Women from last year. So if you don't know that book yet, check the videos that I linked in the description below where I mentioned that last year for Indigathon. But this year, I'm picking and choosing from this. Like I started this, and again, since Beth Ann is here, I can say, thank you, Beth Ann. We did a book swap, and I got this from, I think, Beth Ann earlier this spring when we did a book swap for Independent Bookstores Day. So thank you, thank you. And Walking the Clouds, an anthology of Indigenous science fiction, is just something that I like, you know, pick up and read an essay from and put down because it's short story collections. You can do that. Edited by Grace L. Dillon. And for an elder protagonist, excuse me, my voice is not cooperating today. Oh, we've got a poetry recommendation from Charles at Eberhardt Press. He says, I'd recommend the poet Christos as well. I've heard of this. Yes, this person, Indigenous lesbian poet in Oregon. And I can't place where I've heard of that name, but good associations, probably another read through. So yeah, excellent. Thank you. Let's see. Indigenous science fiction. We're going to go to the elder protagonist in Aunt Parnetta's Electric Blisters, which is a short story from Diane Glancy from 1990. And it's a funny one. I don't know if I'm going to make it with my voice. It's about four pages. And I hope I make it through this and do justice to the story. Aunt Parnetta's Electric Blisters by Diane Glancy. Some stories can be told in winter. This is not one of them, because the fridge is for Parnetta, where it's always winter. Hey, Chekta! All this and now the refrigerator broke. Uncle Philo scratched the long gray hairs that hung in a tattered braid on his back. All that foot stomping and fancy dancing. Old warriors still at it. But when did it help? Aunt Parnetta asked. The fridge ran all through the cold winter when she could have set the milk and eggs in the snow. The fish and meat from the last hunt. The fridge had walked through the spring when she had her quilt and beading money. Now her penny jar was empty, and it was hot, and the glossy white box broke. The coffin. If Grandpa died, they could put him in it, and his war axe and tomahawk. His old dog, even. But how could she get a new fridge? The repairman said he couldn't repair it. Woo, chuta! Philo loaded his rifle and sent a bullet right through it. Well, he said, a man had to take revenge. Had to stand against civilization. He watched the summer sky for change as though the stars were white leaves across the hill. Would the stars fall? Would Philo have to rake them when cool weather came again? Philo coughed and scratched his shirt pocket as though something crawled deep within his breastbone. His heart, maybe, if he ever found it. Aunt Parnetta stood at the sink, soaking the sheets before she washed them. Durnt nothing we do to ever work? Parnetta asked, poking the sheets with her stick. We bought that fridge back 20 years, Philo told her, and it nurked since then. Well, durned, she answered. Could have gone longer till the frost covered us. Could have set the milker side, but now it weren't work that far. Nope, Philo commented. It weren't. Parnetta looked at her beadwork. Her hands flopped at her sides. She couldn't have it done for a long time. She looked at the white patent leathery box. Big enough for both of them. For the cow if it died. Set it out in the backyard with the last one we had. They drove to Tahlequah that afternoon, Philo's truck squirting dust and pinging rocks. They parked in front of the hardware store on Muskogee Street. The regiments of stoves, fridges, washers, dryers stood like white soldiers. The yellow-haired Custer was there to command them. Little Bighorn. Ooh, chuta, the prices. 300 crackers. Some more than that, Philo surmised, his flannel shirt collar tucked under itself, his braid sideways like a rattler on his back. Philo, I dern think we should decide today. No, the immediate answer stummed from his mouth like a roach from under the baseboard in the kitchen. We're just looking. Of course, said Custer. They walked to the door, leaving the stoves, washers, dryers, the televisions all blaring together, and the fridges lined up for battle. Philo lifted his hand from the rattled truck. Surrender, Parnetta said. Isn't that the way it always is? The truck spurted and spattered and shook Philo and Aunt Parnetta before Philo got it back into the street. The forward gear didn't buck as much as the backward. When they got home, Philo took the back off the fridge and looked at the motor. It could move a load of hay up the road if it had wheels. Could freeze half the fish in the pond. The minute coils, the twisting intestines of the fridge, like the hog he butchered last winter, also with a bullet hole in its head. Nothing we do'd work nurks. Parnetta watched him from the kitchen window. Everything against us, she grumbled to herself. Philo got his war feather from the shed, put it in his crooked braid. He stomped his feet, hooted. Philo, the medicine man, transcended to the spirit world for the refrigerator. He shook each kink and bolt, the spirit of cold itself. He whooped and warred in the yard for nearly half an hour. Not with a bullet hole in it. Parnetta shook her head and wiped the sweat from her face. He got his wrench and hacksaw, the axe and hammer. It was dead now for sure. Parnetta knew it at the sink. It was the thing that would be buried in the backyard. Like most of us lived, Aunt Parnetta talked to herself, filled with our own workings, not doing what we should. Parnetta hung the sheets in the yard, white and square as the fridge itself. The new refrigerator came in a delivery truck. It stood in the kitchen, bought on time at a bargain, cheapest in the store. Philo made sure of it. The interest over 5 years would be as much as the fridge. Aunt Parnetta tried to explain it to him. The men set the fridge where Parnetta instructed them. They adjusted and leveled the little hog feet. They gave Parnetta the packet of information, the guarantee, then drove off in victory. The new smell of the gleaming white inside, as though cleansed by cedar from the Kitowa fire. Aunt Parnetta had Philo take her to the grocery store on the old road to Tahlequah. She loaded the cart with milk and butter, frozen waffles, orange juice, anything that had to be kept cool. The fridge made noise, she thought. She would get used to it. But in the night, she heard the fridge. It seemed to fill her dreams. She had trouble going to sleep, even on the clean white sheets, and she had trouble staying asleep. The fridge was like a giant hog in the kitchen, rutting and snorting all night. She got up once and unplugged it, waking early the next morning to plug it in again before the milk and eggs got warm. That fridge bother you, Philo? She asked. Nord. Aunt Parnetta peeled her potatoes outside. She mended Philo's shirts under the shade tree. She didn't soak anything in the kitchen sink anymore, not even the sheets or Philo's socks. There were things she just had to endure, she grumped. That's the way it was. When the grandchildren visited, she had them run in the kitchen for whatever she needed. They picnicked on the old watermelon table in the backyard. She put up the old teepee for them to sleep in. Late in the summer for that? Philo quizzed her. Nert. It was nert to get homesick for the summer that's leaving us like the children. She gratified him with her keen sense. Parnetta could think up anything for what she wanted to do. Several nights Philo returned to their bed with its geese in flight over the swamp-patterned quilt, but Aunt Parnetta stayed in the teepee under the stars. We been married 30 years. Get in the house, Philo said one night under the white leaves of the stars. I can't sleep 'cause that wild hog in the kitchen, Aunt Parnetta said. I told you that. Hey, Chekta, Philo answered her. Why didn't you tell me so I knowed what you said? Philo covered the white box of the fridge with the geese quilt and an old Indian blanket he got from the shed. Word you stayed out there all winter? Till the beast we got in there dies. Hotly gizzard, Philo spurted. That would be another 20 years. Aunt Parnetta was comforted by the bedroom that night. Old Philo's snore after he made his snorting love to her. The gray and blue striped wallpaper with its watermarks. The stovepipe curling up to the wall like a hogtail. The bureau dresser with its little doily and her hairbrush. Pictures by their grandchildren. A turquoise coyote and a ghostly figure the boy told her was running wind. She fell into a light sleep where the white stars blew down from the sky, flapping like the white sheets on the line. She nudged Philo to get his rake. He turned sharply against her. Parnetta woke and sat on the edge of the bed. You want me to cover the furge with something else? Philo asked from his sleep. No, Aunt Parnetta answered him. Not unless it'd be the polar ice cap. Now it was an old trip to Minnesota when she was a girl. Parnetta saw herself in a plaid shirt and braids. Had her hair been that dark? Now it was streaked with gray. Everything was like a child's drawing, exaggerated, the way dreams were sometimes. A sun in the left corner of the picture. The trail of chimney smoke from the narrow house. It was cold, so cold that everything creaked. She heard cars running late into the night. Early mornings, steam growled out of the exhaust. The pane of window glass in the front door had been somewhere else. Old lettering showed up in the frost. Bones remembered their aches in the cold. Teeth their hurt. The way Parnetta remembered every bad thing that happened. She dwelled on it. The cold place was shriveled in a small upright rectangle in her chest, holding the fish her grandson caught in the river. That's where the cold place was, right inside her heart, no longer pumping like the blinker lights she saw in town. She was the Minnesota winter she remembered as a child. The electricity it took to keep her cold. The energy, the moon over her like a ceiling light. Stars were holes where the rain came in. The dripping buckets, all of them like Parnetta. The whir of the fridge, off, on, all night. That white box, wild boar. Think of it. She didn't always know why she was disgruntled. She just was. She saw herself as the fridge, a frozen fish, stiff as a brick. The Great Spirit had her pegged. Could she find her heart, maybe, if she looked somewhere in her chest? Her, rat-tat-tat-drat. Her. The fridge came on again and startled. She woke and teetered slightly on the edge of the bed while it growled. But she was a stranger in this world, an Indian in a white man's land. Even the furge is white, Parnetta told the Great Spirit. Wasn't everybody a stranger and pilgrim? The Great Spirit seemed to speak to her, or it was her own thoughts wandering in her head from her dreams. No, Parnetta insisted. Some people were at home on this earth, moving with ease. She would ask the Great Spirit more about it later, when he finally yanked the life out of her like the pin in a grenade. Suddenly, Parnetta realized that she was always moaning like the fridge. Maybe she irritated the Great Spirit like the white box irritated her. Did she sound that way to anyone else? Was that the spirit's revenge? She was stuck with the cheapest box in the store. In fact, in her fears, wasn't it a white boar which would tear into the room and eat her soon as she got good and asleep? Hadn't she seen the worst in things? Didn't she weigh herself in the winter with her coat on, sometimes wrapped in the blanket also? Philo? She turned to him, but he was out cold, farther away than Minnesota. No. Just think about it, Parnetta, her thoughts seemed to say. The spirit had blessed her life, but inside the white refrigerator of herself, inside the coils, an ice river surged. A glacier moved its way across the continent, everything frozen for eons. In need of a Kitawa fire, heat, the warmth of the Great Spirit. Philo was only a spark. He could not warm her, even though he tried. Maybe the Great Spirit had done her a favor. Hope, like white sparks of stars, glistened in her head. The electric blisters. Temporary. She could shut up. She belonged to the spirit. He had just unplugged her a minute, took his rifle right through her head. The leaves growled and spewed white sparks in the sky. It was a volcano from the moon, erupting in the heavens, sending down its white sparks like the pinwheels Philo used to nail on trees. It was the bright sparks of the Kitawa fire, the holy bonfire from which smaller fires burned, spreading the purification of the Great Spirit into each house, into each hard, old pine cone heart. Ah! That one really hit me. I loved it. So I'd recommend Walking the Clouds, an anthology of Indigenous science fiction. And there's even a foreword for this essay where the author talks about how she didn't consider it science fiction until someone put it in an anthology, and then she thought about it. Yeah, so very, very cool. All right, so that was my elder protagonist. Thanks for staying with me there. That is a long talking, as my voice will attest. Say hello to the people coming in here. Mina Ruth, hello. Heiner, hello. What are you reading? Good evening, Portland. Elder protagonist in one of the essays, science fiction stories in this anthology that I got from our book swap earlier this year. Beth Ann's providing it. Aunt Parnetta's Electric Blisters, I think, a short story in an Indigenous science fiction anthology. Thank you for supplying that for me while I was up and away with the white box. So good. So that is the last prompt for on Indigathon. If you are learning, if you're getting good book recommendations here, like poetry, like nonfiction, feel free to like the video. I've already shouted out my other two favorite Indigenous booktubers, Kim and Melitta. That's Native Lady Book Warrior and The Midnight Librarian. They're pretty easy to find. Just in Case is here. Hi, fellas. How you doing? The last bit I was going to do is just to say I've got upcoming, upcoming videos, which include Friday's dramatic reading. So there's going to be more from All We Can Save. So if you haven't got enough of this book, like I haven't, we'll be reading from this. Some of the poetry is really, really good in here on Friday. So that is the link for that. And then Sunday is going to be my Patreon bookish chat, which I'm going to be hosting author Emily Harris for. So you can tune in for that. She's another historical fiction author, but she writes steamy historical fiction. So I also saw that she put up a review of one of Pay's books. So she's like in the AuthorTube community putting out great content. I really appreciate. Sorry, my voice is just like cutting out and leaving me here. I appreciate a lot of the content she puts in. She's got some interesting stuff that is coming from her travels, some stuff in Virginia. I don't know if you've checked it out. I'd love to discuss some of this with her, but we'll also be going into some of her background and just AuthorTube stuff on Sunday. And that is about it, I think. If you guys have videos where you're talking about Native American Heritage Month or other Native American reads or Indigenous or First Nations, again, thank you to Amy at A-Star Reads for putting in some of the other terms. We can all sort through them together. Reads, definitely drop them in as a comment and I'll watch those videos. Yeah, I figured if Pei was still here, he would want to watch our interview with Emily and me on Sunday at 11 Pacific time. And Justin saying, my first big crush and girlfriend was a First Nation from Whitehorse, Yukon. We met on an international scout camp. How very cool. Neat. So if you've learned stuff, feel free to like and subscribe today. Make a video about Indigathon, about Native American heritage, about books that you are reading or favorites that you have in the past that are Indigenous written. And, you know, be an ally. Be out there in the community and show your support. We would love it. We being everybody on YouTube, my community here. But that is it for today. I'm going to go drink some more water and cut back on the tea, and I will see you again soon. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Bye.